Max Carter had always been an ordinary boy, or so he believed. Growing up on a quiet farm in Iowa, his life revolved around tending chickens, tinkering with gadgets in his father's shed, and dreaming of distant stars. He was fascinated by the idea of extraterrestrial life and the vast mysteries of the universe. But Max never imagined that one day he would find himself at the center of it all. It all started with a clerical error and innocent mistake that would alter his life forever. The Galactic Union, an interstellar coalition overseeing peace and cooperation among hundreds of planets, had recently implemented a scholarship program to allow a few select humans to attend alien academies. The program aimed to foster interspecies understanding, but only the best and brightest humans were considered. Max, however, was far from a top candidate. Yet somehow, his name ended up on the roster. The error went unnoticed until the day an enormous ship appeared above the Carter family's farmhouse. Its sleek, metallic hull glinted under the sun, casting a massive shadow over their cornfield. Max was feeding the chickens when a booming voice echoed from the craft. "Max Carter, prepare for transport to Zoltarian Combat Academy." The voice startled Max so badly that he dropped the feed bucket, scattering grain across the yard. His parents ran out of the house, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Before anyone could react, a beam of light shot down from the ship, enveloping Max in a shimmering cocoon. He felt weightless as he was lifted into the air, the world below shrinking rapidly. His mother's frantic shouts grew distant until they disappeared entirely. Inside the ship, Max found himself surrounded by towering, armored aliens with reptilian features and glowing eyes. They spoke in a guttural language he couldn't understand, their massive frames dwarfing his own. Despite their intimidating presence, one of them handed him a small translation device, which he nervously attached to his ear. "Welcome, recruit," the largest alien growled. Its voice now resonated in perfect English, though it still carried a menacing edge. "You have been selected to join the Zoltarian Combat Academy, the most prestigious institution in the galaxy. You should feel honored." Max blinked, struggling to process what was happening. "There must be some mistake," he stammered. "I'm just a farm kid. I'm not a soldier." The alien tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing. "The Galactic Union sent your name. There is no mistake." Max wanted to argue, but the ship began to tremble as it accelerated. Through a small window, he saw Earth fading into the distance, replaced by the infinite blackness of space. He was too overwhelmed to protest further. The journey to Zoltarian was brief, thanks to advanced warp technology. When the ship exited hyperspace, Max's jaw dropped at the sight of the Academy. It was a colossal space station, floating in orbit around a glowing red planet. The structure sprawled across miles, with jagged spires, shimmering domes, and enormous training arenas visible even from space. Dozens of ships buzzed around it like bees around a hive. As the ship docked, Max was ushered into the Academy alongside a group of alien recruits. They ranged from insectoid creatures with multiple limbs to hulking beasts covered in scales. All of them radiated strength and confidence. Max, on the other hand, felt like a lamb being led to the slaughter. The orientation hall was no less intimidating. The walls were made of an iridescent material that shifted colors as if alive. Massive banners hung from the ceiling, displaying alien symbols and holographic images of legendary warriors. At the front of the hall stood the Academy's headmaster, a towering figure with 4 arms and a stern expression. "Welcome to Zoltarian Combat Academy," the headmaster declared in a deep, resonant voice. "Here, you will train to become the protectors of the galaxy. Weakness is not tolerated. Failure is not an option." Max gulped. His presence had already attracted attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd as aliens noticed the lone human among them. Some sneered, their sharp teeth bared in derision. Others laughed openly, their voices echoing through the hall. "What's that puny thing doing here?" One alien jeered, its voice dripping with contempt. "I didn't know they let prey species into the Academy," another mocked. Max tried to shrink into the background, but there was no escape. He was assigned to the lowest-tier dormitory, a cramped, dimly lit room that smelled faintly of metal and sulfur. His bunkmate, a gruff alien with spiked skin and 4 eyes, didn't bother introducing himself. He simply grunted and turned away. The first day of training was a nightmare. Max was thrown into a zero-gravity obstacle course designed for species with enhanced strength and agility. He struggled to navigate the floating platforms while his peers leaped effortlessly from one to the next. By the end of the session, he had fallen more times than he could count and was covered in bruises. Combat training was even worse. Max was paired with a reptilian alien twice his size, who swatted him aside like a rag doll. The instructor barked orders in frustration, clearly regretting Max's inclusion in the program. The other recruits watched with amusement, their laughter cutting through Max's bruised ego like a knife. By the end of the day, Max collapsed onto his bunk, his body aching and his spirit shattered. He felt utterly out of place, a fragile human in a world of giants. For the first time since his unexpected journey began, tears welled up in his eyes. He wanted nothing more than to go home. But as he lay there, staring at the flickering light on the ceiling, a spark of determination began to flicker within him. Max had always been underestimated, even on Earth. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but he had something else: ingenuity. He remembered the countless hours he had spent building contraptions on the farm, solving problems with creativity and resourcefulness. Perhaps those skills could help him here. The next day, Max approached training with a new mindset. Instead of relying on brute strength, he began to study his surroundings and analyze his opponents. In the obstacle course, he used the zero-gravity environment to his advantage, propelling himself with calculated movements. In combat, he observed his opponent's patterns, dodging attacks instead of meeting them head-on. It wasn't perfect, and he still faced ridicule, but he was no longer a passive victim. His turning point came during a survival exercise in a simulated alien jungle. The recruits were tasked with navigating hostile terrain while evading mechanical predators. Most relied on their physical abilities to outrun or overpower the machines, but Max used his wits. He constructed traps from the environment, leading the predators into ambushes. By the end of the exercise, he had not only survived but had outperformed several of his peers. Word of Max's unexpected success began to spread. Though many still doubted him, a few started to see him as more than just a weak human. The spark of determination within Max grew into a flame, and he vowed to prove that he belonged at the Zoltarian Combat Academy. Unbeknownst to him, his journey was only beginning. The challenges ahead would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time, Max felt a glimmer of hope and a growing belief that even the smallest spark could ignite a galaxy. Max awoke to the sharp blare of the Academy's alarm system, a sound that rattled through the walls of his cramped dormitory like the roar of a cosmic storm. His bunkmate, a burly alien with a hardened exoskeleton and a perpetual scowl, was already on his feet, muttering something in his guttural native language. Max groaned, his muscles protesting every movement. It had only been a week since his unexpected arrival at the Zoltarian Combat Academy, and his body still hadn't adjusted to the intense training or the heavier gravity of the station. "Move it, human," growled his bunkmate, who had yet to bother with introductions. "Today's the trial. If you fall behind, no one's coming to pick up the pieces." The trial. Max had overheard fragments about it in the mess hall the previous night, whispered in tones of awe and dread. It was a rite of passage, designed to push recruits to their limits and beyond. Success meant advancement, failure meant humiliation or worse. For someone like Max, already seen as the Academy's weakest link, the stakes couldn't have been higher. He stumbled into his uniform, the fabric still ill-fitted to his smaller frame, and followed the stream of recruits to the briefing chamber. The room was massive, its domed ceiling shimmering with holographic projections of past warriors' heroes immortalized in glowing alien runes. At the front stood Commander Threx, a stern figure with obsidian-like skin and glowing blue veins that pulsed with every word he spoke. "Recruits," Threx began, his voice resonating through the chamber like the toll of a galactic bell. "Today you face the trial. It is not merely a test of strength but of strategy, adaptability, and survival. You will navigate the simulation dome, a hostile environment designed to challenge every fiber of your being. There will be no second chances." Max's stomach churned. He glanced at the recruits around him, towering figures with razor-sharp claws, armored scales, and glowing eyes that hinted at predatory instincts honed over millennia. What chance did he have against them? The recruits were divided into squads and led to the simulation dome, an immense, circular arena encased in a transparent barrier. Beyond the barrier, the dome's environment shifted and morphed, transitioning from dense jungles to icy wastelands, volcanic terrains to barren deserts. Max's squad, consisting of 6 recruits, included his bunkmate and a few others who barely acknowledged his presence. As they stepped into the dome, the environment solidified into a sprawling jungle, its thick foliage glowing faintly under an alien sun. The air was humid and heavy, filled with the distant cries of mechanical predators, artificial creatures programmed to hunt and eliminate. The objective was simple: reach the extraction point at the center of the jungle. But the path was anything but straightforward. No sooner had the trial begun than Max's squadmates sprang into action, their movements swift and calculated. His bunkmate, armed with spiked gauntlets, led the charge, bulldozing through the undergrowth with sheer brute force. Another recruit, a lithe insectoid with multiple limbs, scouted ahead, her compound eyes scanning for threats. Max, struggling to keep up, felt like dead weight. "Stick to the rear, human," his bunkmate snapped. "Try not to get in our way." Max clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath his skin. He wanted to retort, to prove he wasn't useless, but the sound of a predator's roar silenced him. From the shadows, a massive, wolf-like machine with razor-sharp fangs lunged at the group. The recruits reacted instantly, unleashing a barrage of coordinated attacks. Max watched, wide-eyed, as his bunkmate's gauntlets tore through the predator's metallic hide, sending sparks flying. "Keep moving," the insectoid barked. "There will be more." They pressed on, the jungle growing denser with each step. Max noticed things the others didn't: subtle shifts in the environment, the glint of metallic claws in the distance, the faint hum of machinery buried beneath the soil. His years on the farm had honed his observational skills, and he realized that the predators weren't acting randomly. They were herding the recruits, steering them into traps. "Wait," Max called out, his voice shaky but firm. "We're being funneled into an ambush." His squadmates ignored him, too focused on forging ahead. Max bit his lip, scanning the terrain. His eyes fell on a narrow path veering off to the side, partially obscured by foliage. It was risky, but it offered an alternative route. Without waiting for permission, he darted down the path, his heart pounding in his chest. The decision proved fortuitous. Moments later, the ground beneath the main trail erupted, mechanical predators springing from hidden burrows. Max heard the shouts of his squadmates, followed by the clash of metal and the hiss of plasma weapons. His detour had saved him, but he couldn't abandon the others, not yet. Using his smaller size to his advantage, Max circled back through the dense undergrowth. He found his squad pinned down, surrounded by 3 predators. The machines were relentless, their glowing eyes locked onto their prey. Max's mind raced. He didn't have the strength to fight them head-on, but perhaps he didn't need to. Spotting a cluster of thick, hanging vines above the predators, Max formulated a plan. He climbed a nearby tree, his hands slipping on the damp bark, and positioned himself directly above the machines. With a deep breath, he swung down, severing the vines with a makeshift blade he had fashioned from a shard of metal earlier. The vines fell like a net, entangling the predators and immobilizing them long enough for the squad to deliver the final blows. His bunkmate stared at him, a mixture of surprise and begrudging respect flickering across his face. "Not bad, human," he grunted. The group regrouped and pressed on, but the dynamics had subtly shifted. Max was no longer dismissed outright. His observations and quick thinking began to earn him a place in the squad's strategy. He spotted traps before they were triggered, devised ways to outmaneuver the predators, and even found a hidden cache of supplies that helped the team recover from their injuries. As they neared the extraction point, the jungle gave way to a vast clearing, where the final challenge awaited. A towering, 4-legged predator, far larger and more advanced than any they had encountered, stood guard. Its body shimmered with an energy shield, and its movements were eerily fluid, almost organic. The squad hesitated, fear etched into their faces. Max, however, was already analyzing the situation. The predator's shield had a flickering weak point, small but exploitable. He quickly outlined a plan, assigning roles to each squadmate. At first, they balked at taking orders from him, but desperation outweighed pride. The plan unfolded with precision. Max and the insectoid provided a distraction, drawing the predator's attention while the others targeted its weak point. The battle was intense, the predator's attacks devastating, but the squad's coordinated efforts ultimately prevailed. The shield shattered, and the predator collapsed in a heap of sparking metal. As the squad stepped onto the extraction platform, battered but victorious, Commander Threx's hologram appeared before them. His glowing eyes lingered on Max, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his stern demeanor. "Impressive," Threx said. "Perhaps there is more to humans than meets the eye." Max's squadmates, though reluctant to admit it, offered him nods of acknowledgement. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Max felt a surge of confidence. He had survived the trial not through brute strength, but through ingenuity and teamwork. And while he still had much to prove, the spark of belief within him burned brighter than ever. Unbeknownst to Max, this was only the beginning of his journey. The challenges ahead would be even greater, but for now he allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. He had taken the first step toward earning his place among the galaxy's elite. The days following the trial marked a turning point for Max Carter. Though he was far from being fully accepted by his peers at the Zoltarian Combat Academy, the whispers of doubt that had once surrounded him began to fade. His success in the jungle simulation had earned him a small measure of respect, but the road ahead remained steep. Max was keenly aware that his victory was only a step, not the summit. If he wanted to truly belong, he needed to prove himself on a much larger scale. The opportunity arrived sooner than he expected. The Academy was abuzz with anticipation for the annual Galactic Combat Tournament, a legendary event that drew spectators and competitors from across the galaxy. The tournament was not merely a competition, it was a stage where the best of the best displayed their prowess, earning glory and solidifying their status as future protectors of the galaxy. Participation was not mandatory, and only the most confident recruits dared to enter. For Max, entering the tournament seemed like madness, but he couldn't shake the thought from his mind. As the announcement of the tournament echoed through the academy, Max stood in the training arena, watching his peers spar. They moved with fluid precision, their strikes calculated and their defenses nearly impenetrable. He could see the sharp claws, bio-enhanced muscles, and natural armor that gave them an undeniable edge. Compared to them, Max felt painfully ordinary. But he also knew that his strength lay elsewhere in the ability to think outside the box, to adapt and improvise. The trial had shown him that his ingenuity could level the playing field, even against the fiercest opponents. "You're seriously considering entering?" The voice of his bunkmate, Zarnok, startled Max out of his thoughts. The hulking alien leaned against a nearby pillar, his spiked arms crossed over his chest. "The tournament is no place for someone like you." Max turned to face him, his jaw tightening. "Someone like me? You mean a human?" Zarnok snorted, his four eyes narrowing. "Call it what you will. I mean someone who doesn't stand a chance. You've done well enough to survive here, but the tournament? That's a different story." Max didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked back at the sparring recruits, their movements a blur of power and speed. "Maybe I don't stand a chance," he admitted, "but if I don't try, I'll never know." Zarnok shook his head, a mixture of amusement and exasperation flickering across his face. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met, or the most foolish." Max wasn't sure which one he was either, but he knew he couldn't let fear hold him back. He signed up for the tournament that same day, much to the astonishment of his peers. The news spread quickly, and the academy buzzed with speculation. Some laughed outright, betting on how quickly he would be eliminated. Others watched with quiet curiosity, intrigued by his audacity. The first stage of the tournament was a series of qualification matches designed to weed out the weakest competitors. Max's initial opponent was a towering reptilian alien with razor-sharp talons and a tail that could shatter stone. As the match began, the crowd roared with excitement, eager to witness the inevitable humiliation of the Academy's lone human recruit. Max's heart pounded as he stepped into the arena. The heat of the artificial sun above combined with the weight of 1,000 eyes watching his every move. He could feel the vibrations of the crowd's cheers in his bones. His opponent circled him, a predatory gleam in its eyes. The match was over in less than 2 minutes, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of engaging his opponent head-on, Max used the environment to his advantage. He lured the reptilian into a trap, baiting it toward a series of crumbling pillars. With precise timing, he triggered a chain reaction that brought the structure down on his opponent, pinning it long enough for Max to land the decisive blow. The crowd fell into stunned silence before erupting into cheers and disbelief. Max's unorthodox approach became the talk of the Academy. In subsequent rounds, he continued to defy expectations, using creativity and strategy to overcome opponents who were faster, stronger, and more experienced. Against a quadrupedal alien with a thick exoskeleton, he utilized reflective surfaces in the arena to blind its sensitive eyes. Against an avian species with the ability to fly, he created a makeshift trap using the arena's energy barriers. Each victory further cemented his place as the tournament's dark horse. As Max advanced through the rounds, he began to notice a shift in the way his peers treated him. The derision that had once followed him everywhere was replaced by a mix of respect and curiosity. Fellow recruits who had once ignored him now sought him out, asking about his tactics and offering advice. Even Zarnok, who had been one of his harshest critics, began to show a grudging admiration. "You're proving me wrong, human," Zarnok admitted after one of Max's matches. "But don't let it go to your head. The final rounds are where the real competition begins." Zarnok wasn't wrong. The semifinals brought Max face-to-face with an opponent who seemed unbeatable: Silra, a lithe, insectoid alien with lightning-fast reflexes and blades for arms. Silra had dominated every match she'd been in, her precision and speed leaving her opponents no chance to react. As the match began, Max knew this would be his toughest challenge yet. Silra moved like a blur, her attacks coming from all directions. Max barely managed to dodge, each strike grazing him by mere inches. His mind raced as he searched for a way to counter her relentless assault. Then he noticed something: a pattern in her movements. Silra always attacked in a sequence, alternating between her left and right blades. Using this knowledge, Max set a trap. He feigned weakness, allowing her to corner him against a wall. As she moved in for the finishing blow, he ducked and rolled to the side, causing her blade to strike the energy barrier instead. The resulting shock momentarily stunned her, giving Max the opening he needed to land a decisive strike. The crowd erupted into deafening applause as Silra fell, defeated. Max's victory secured him a place in the finals, a position no one had expected him to reach. The Academy was abuzz with excitement and speculation. Could the human underdog actually win? Max, for his part, was too exhausted to celebrate. His body ached from the constant battles, and the weight of the final match loomed heavy in his mind. His opponent in the finals was Zorclan, the reigning champion and a figure of near mythical status at the Academy. Zorclan was a colossus, his body encased in impenetrable armor and his strength unmatched. He had never lost a match, and his victories were often so decisive that they bordered on brutal. The night before the final match, Max found himself alone in the training arena, staring at his reflection in the polished floor. Doubt crept into his mind. How could he possibly defeat someone like Zorclan? He was just a human, a boy from a small farm on Earth. But then he remembered everything he had overcome to get here. The whispers of doubt, the laughter, the impossible odds. He had faced them all and come out stronger. With renewed determination, Max prepared for the battle of his life. He knew that victory wasn't just about proving himself, it was about proving that humanity had a place among the galaxy's elite. The day of the final match arrived with an atmosphere so thick with anticipation that it seemed to permeate every corner of the Academy. The entire student body, along with countless instructors and even visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy, had gathered in the grand arena. Holographic screens hovered in the air, broadcasting live feeds of the event to spectators on distant planets. This was more than just a match, it was a spectacle, a celebration of the Academy's finest, and a moment of galactic history in the making. Max Carter stood in the preparation chamber, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The air was heavy with the scent of metal and ozone, a reminder of the high-energy weapons that would soon light up the arena. He stared at his reflection in the polished surface of his combat gear. The armor provided by the Academy was minimal, designed for agility rather than protection, and it seemed almost laughable compared to the hulking, impenetrable suit worn by his opponent, Zorclan. Zorclan was a living legend at the Academy, his name spoken in tones of reverence and fear. Standing over 8 feet tall, his body was encased in gleaming obsidian armor that shimmered with an energy shield so advanced that even the most powerful weapons struggled to penetrate it. His strength was the stuff of nightmares, and his precision in combat was unparalleled. For years, Zorclan had reigned as the Academy's champion, defeating every opponent with a cold efficiency that left no room for doubt about his superiority. Max closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. The odds were impossible, but then, they always had been. From the moment he had arrived at the Academy, he had faced ridicule, doubt, and seemingly insurmountable challenges. And yet, here he was, standing on the precipice of history. Win or lose, this match would define his legacy. A booming voice echoed through the chamber, signaling the start of the match. Competitors, prepare for combat. Max stepped into the arena, the roar of the crowd washing over him like a tidal wave. The grand arena was a marvel of alien engineering, its floor a constantly shifting landscape that could simulate any environment. Today, it had been programmed as a zero-gravity battlefield, with floating platforms and obstacles suspended in a vast void. Bright, artificial stars dotted the simulated expanse, adding to the surreal beauty of the setting. Across the arena, Zor Clan entered to thunderous applause. The champion moved with a deliberate, almost mechanical precision, his massive frame dwarfing Max's. The two competitors stood on opposite ends of the battlefield, the stark contrast between them a visual representation of the challenge ahead. Begin. The announcer's voice rang out, and the arena erupted into chaos. Zor Clan wasted no time, launching himself across the void with a force that sent shockwaves rippling through the air. Max barely had time to react, leaping to a nearby platform as Zor Clan's armored fist smashed into the spot where he had stood moments before. The platform shattered under the impact, fragments of metal spiraling into the void. Max's mind raced as he scrambled to stay ahead of Zor Clan's relentless onslaught. The champion's attacks were powerful and precise, each strike calculated to corner Max and leave him with no escape. But Max knew better than to engage Zor Clan directly. His strength lay not in brute force but in strategy and adaptability. As the battle raged on, Max began to analyze Zor Clan's movements, searching for patterns and weaknesses. He noticed that the champion's energy shield, while nearly impenetrable, flickered briefly during his most powerful attacks. It wasn't much, but it was a start. If Max could time his strikes perfectly, he might have a chance. The zero-gravity environment was both a blessing and a curse. While it allowed Max to evade Zor Clan's attacks with greater agility, it also made it nearly impossible to gain a stable footing. Every movement required precision and control, and the slightest misstep could send him spiraling into the void. Max used the floating platforms to his advantage, leading Zor Clan into a series of high-speed chases that forced the champion to expend energy. Zor Clan, however, was not easily outmaneuvered. With a growl that reverberated through the arena, he launched a barrage of energy blasts from his gauntlets, each one narrowly missing Max as he darted from platform to platform. The blasts shattered the floating obstacles, reducing Max's options and leaving him increasingly vulnerable. Max's breath came in ragged gasps as he clung to the edge of a platform, his mind racing for a solution. The crowd's cheers and gasps seemed distant, drowned out by the pounding of his heartbeat. He couldn't win this fight with strength alone. He needed to turn Zor Clan's power against him. An idea began to form a risky, borderline reckless plan that relied on timing and precision. Max spotted a cluster of floating energy cells, part of the arena's simulated infrastructure. If he could lure Zor Clan into striking one of them, the resulting explosion might be enough to disrupt the champion's shield and leave him vulnerable. Summoning every ounce of courage, Max launched himself toward the energy cells, using the remaining platforms as cover. Zor Clan pursued, his heavy footsteps sending vibrations through the arena. The champion's eyes glowed with a predatory intensity, sensing that his victory was near. As Max reached the energy cells, he turned to face Zor Clan, his heart pounding in his chest. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Just a little closer." Zor Clan obliged, his armored fist raised for a devastating strike. Max waited until the last possible moment before diving out of the way. The champion's fist connected with the energy cells, triggering a massive explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through the arena. The force of the blast propelled Max backward, slamming him into a platform and knocking the wind out of him. For a moment, the arena was silent, the crowd holding its collective breath. As the smoke cleared, Zor Clan emerged, his armor scorched and his energy shield flickering erratically. It wasn't a decisive blow, but it was enough to create an opening. Max pushed himself to his feet, every muscle screaming in protest. Summoning his remaining strength, he launched himself toward Zor Clan, using the debris from the explosion as makeshift stepping stones. The champion, disoriented but far from defeated, swung at Max with a force that could have shattered bone. Max ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the blow. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, Max targeted the weak point in Zor Clan's armor, a small, exposed joint near his shoulder. With a precision born of countless hours of training and sheer determination, Max drove his weapon into the joint, delivering a surge of energy that overloaded the champion's systems. Zorklan staggered, his movements slowing as his armor locked up. The arena erupted into deafening cheers as Zorklan fell to his knees, his towering frame casting a long shadow over Max. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. The winner, Max Carter. Max collapsed onto the platform, his chest heaving as relief washed over him. He had done the impossible, defeating the Academy's greatest champion. As he looked up at the crowd, he saw faces filled with awe and admiration. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. Zorklan, still kneeling, turned to Max and offered a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of respect from one warrior to another. It was a moment that transcended species and status, a testament to the power of determination and ingenuity. As the crowd chanted his name, Max realized that this victory was more than just his own. It was a triumph for humanity, a declaration that even the smallest spark could light up the galaxy. Max Carter lay on the cold metal floor of the arena, his chest heaving as the deafening cheers of the crowd echoed around him. The holographic screens hovering above displayed his victorious moment on an endless loop, the precise strike that had brought Zorklan, the Academy's invincible champion, to his knees. It was a sight no one had believed possible, least of all Max himself. And yet, against all odds, the impossible had happened. The announcement of his victory still rang in his ears, as though the words were struggling to sink into his mind. The winner, Max Carter. It was a declaration not just of triumph, but of something deeper. Max had not only won the tournament, he had rewritten the expectations placed upon him and his species. A shadow fell over him, and Max looked up to see Zorklan standing, his massive frame still towering despite the obvious exhaustion etched into his movements. The champion extended a hand, his expression unreadable but his gesture unmistakable, a show of respect. Max hesitated for only a moment before clasping the armored hand, and Zorklan hoisted him to his feet with a strength that felt more supportive than intimidating. "You fought well, human," Zorklan said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying no hint of the arrogance he had exuded before the match. "You've earned this." The arena erupted again, the sound almost overwhelming as Max stood there, Zorklan's words replaying in his mind. He had earned this, not by chance, not by luck, but through sheer determination, ingenuity, and resilience. As the announcer declared the tournament officially concluded, Commander Threx's imposing holographic figure appeared in the center of the arena. His glowing blue eyes swept over the scene, lingering on Max with an intensity that made the young human's skin prickle. Threx raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Recruits, students, and honored guests," Threx began, his voice amplified to fill the arena. "Today we have witnessed history. Max Carter, the first human to ever compete in this tournament, has proven that strength does not always come from size, power, or species. It comes from within, the ability to adapt, to persevere, and to overcome." Max felt a lump rise in his throat as the commander's words sank in. He had never sought to be a symbol, but in this moment he realized that his victory was about more than just himself. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy, a place that had long been underestimated. Threx's hologram turned to face Max directly. "Max Carter, by the authority of the Zoltarian Combat Academy, I hereby bestow upon you the title of Elite Warrior, an honor reserved for only the most exceptional of our students. May your legacy inspire others to reach beyond their limits." The crowd erupted once more, and Max's vision blurred as tears welled in his eyes. The Elite Warrior title was more than just a badge of honor, it was a recognition that transcended species and status. As Threx's hologram faded, Max felt the weight of the moment settle over him. He wasn't just a farm boy from Earth anymore. He was a symbol of possibility. In the days that followed, the Academy buzzed with a new energy. Max found himself at the center of attention, not just from his peers but from instructors, dignitaries, and even galactic media. Interviews were broadcast across the galaxy, his story shared as an example of humanity's potential. The skepticism that had greeted his arrival was replaced with curiosity and admiration. Even species that had once dismissed humans as insignificant began to view them in a new light. Max's relationships with his peers also began to shift. Zarnok, his once dismissive bunkmate, now treated him with a mixture of respect and camaraderie. "You're still small and weak," Zarnok joked one evening, but I'd follow you into battle any day. Silra, the fierce insectoid warrior Max had defeated in the semi-finals, approached him during a training session. Your strategy was flawless, she admitted, her multifaceted eyes gleaming with something that resembled respect. I'd like to spar with you again on equal footing this time. But amidst the accolades and newfound respect, Max remained grounded. He continued his training with the same determination as before, knowing that his journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges yet to be faced. His victory in the tournament was only the beginning. One evening, as Max stood on a balcony overlooking the Academy's sprawling campus, he was joined by Commander Threx. The elder warrior's presence was as imposing as ever, but there was a hint of warmth in his voice as he spoke. "You've done well, Carter," Threx said, his gaze fixed on the stars above. "But you must understand that this victory is more than just a personal achievement. It is a message to the galaxy, a reminder that greatness can come from the most unexpected places." Max nodded, the weight of Threx's words settling over him. "I understand, sir. But I didn't do this to prove a point. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could." Threx turned to him, his glowing eyes piercing yet kind. "And that, Max, is why you succeeded. Remember this, the galaxy will always test you. It will challenge you to your core. But as long as you remain true to who you are, you will overcome." The commander's words stayed with Max as he continued his journey at the Academy. Over time, he became not just a student but a mentor, helping others, human and alien alike, unlock their potential. His innovative strategies and unorthodox methods became part of the curriculum, reshaping the way the Academy approached combat training. Years later, Max stood at the gates of the Academy, watching as a new generation of recruits arrived. Among them were other humans, their eyes filled with the same mixture of fear and determination that Max had once felt. He smiled, knowing that they too would face trials that would shape them into something greater. Max's story spread far beyond the Academy, inspiring humans across the galaxy to pursue opportunities they had once thought impossible. He became a symbol of resilience and ingenuity, a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite a flame that illuminated the stars. And so, Max Carter's legacy was cemented not just as a warrior, but as a bridge between species, a beacon of hope, and a testament to the limitless potential of the human spirit.